I'm discussing what is history. Like we are digging into what is Buddhist history, what is Buddhist studies. Here in historical studies also we discussed uh, how to make sense of Indian history. That's the purpose of my class. How to make sense of Indian history. The reason is because Indian sources are very diverse. Sources are diverse. India is not monolithic one country like you have say Germany, only German is there, Bhutan, only one Tibet. It has multiple languages, multiple cultures, multiple sources of history. So you can't have a monolithic history. But second, the way Indian history got written was not the way how it is studied or it got written in Western world or in Europe. So first we need to understand what are the two parallel way of writing history. That's one purpose. For that I have shared a document in historical studies classroom, which I was going to discuss today, but I am not discussing that today. That's your assignment. Or maybe tomorrow, tomorrow we have class. Tomorrow we will be discussing that. Go through that essay written by Nirmal Verma, one of the very, it's already there in the Google Classroom. Those who are not added, write your name also in the attendance register so that I can add you. In Google Classroom, I have shared document. It's a long document. Go through it. If you don't understand much, I will be explaining tomorrow. You can ask questions. And every not this week, but next week, based on the document and the discussion for the class, we will have one MCQ, multiple choice question examination. That's how I teach. Buddhist studies students already know that. For Buddhist studies students, today I will be discussing the group. So we will discuss what is history, one, and another topic is historiography. Anybody who is familiar with this term? What does historiography mean? Say it loudly for everybody. The apparatus of history. So that how we write history. This historiography means we have this graph, that's geography, and many graphic terms. That means for historiography, the very simple, in simple words, is history of history. That means how history is written. So, as Emmanuel said, the various apparatus, various sources which historian uses to write history. That's historiography. I think in previous class we discussed about this, what is history. In order to understand first historiography, we need to define what is history itself. So, history, the process of, this is not my definition by the way, this is PHR. He wrote about what is history. It is taught to in all over the world almost. When history, you can read the books available online. You can download. You can. It's recommended reading for first year MA student. When we study, it's everywhere. I'm not going to discuss the entire content of the book. What I'm discussing, how he has defined history. So it's on page number 100. I've given the footnote address. It's on page number 100. This is a process of selection in terms of historical significance. The events which have some historical significance. Our name won't get recorded in history, provided if we don't do something very extraordinary. Good or bad doesn't matter. So it's process of selection of events which are significant for, there is a word for his means her also. His here, her means a historian. Historian's purpose. Something happening in India, big event, might be not significant for a person living in, say, Vietnam. Just so there is selection of. So historians, they choose what to write and what not to write. And when you are also doing research, you will come across this problem: what to write and what not to write. So it's a process of selection. In terms of events, in terms of historical significance. EHR further says, just as from infinite collection of facts, historians select those which are significant for this purpose. So there is a vast amount of information. Historian is selecting, cherry picking actually. So from the multiplicity of sequences of the course and effect, he or she extracts those and only those which are historically significant, and the standard of historical significance is his or her historian's ability to fill them into proper pattern. This is also important. To fill them into proper pattern, you will come across so many facts. Now you will find what is significant for you as a historian. Now just when you are writing a term paper, research paper, book, it's not just collection of random facts. You have to give it a proper narrative, a proper pattern, and rational explanation and interpretation. So this is how EHR defines history. So you need to have a pattern, you have to create a narrative, you have to tell a story. The story. If you are not able to tell a story, your writing does not, won't make impact to the reader. Because reader, when he reads, he's trying to interact with what you have found. So unless you are able to create a pattern and rational explanation and interpretation, your work won't fall into the history. Or anybody's work won't fall into history. That is how. That's historian's burden. Now, when a historian is selecting facts, any historian is selecting facts, depending upon the person's choice, person's need, person's goal, the person will select the fact. As Indian, I will select certain facts. And as a American historian, the person will select some other fact. So it is person choice, and not just because of geographical or that purpose. We all have our ideology as well. I am a Buddhist. Right? We all have our attachments and hates. We prefer certain things. We have preference. And this preference is very subjective. It can't be objectified. You can't make this preference, so everybody should have this preference. Everybody should eat only, say, Indian food or non-vegetarian food or vegetarian food. You can't have. And you have a preference. Sometimes, there are certain things which I like. And this preference also changes over time. Is it making sense? Similarly, when somebody is writing history, the person has preferences. So based on that, when we are talking about Indian history, the problem last class also I had this problem. This problem is there for other teachers as well. It has become selective. Like historians are selective. So that there are three main categories of schools of history. Schools of history means a group of historians when they are writing they are writing both. This is not just about, mostly this is about Indian history, but it is also applicable for world history as well. So when historians they write history, and then a critical person like somebody who knows, so you all the historical writing they have been categorized, especially in context of Indian history, they have been categorized in 3, 4, and this is 5, 6 also. There are multiple lists. This is a very general. So whatever people have written about Indian history, that can be categorized in these categories. Marxist, first is Cambridge or colonial history. This means in when India got colonized around 17th, 18th century. Colony means when Britishers came to India and they imposed their rule on India, that means colony. So when India got colonized, they created a new type of history which Indian did not knew. Based on Indian textual sources, they created a type of history which the purpose was not Indian people. For writing that history, this purpose was to make the European people, especially British administration, to make sense how India functions, what is Indian social structure, what is their heritage. So audience was not Indian. Remember, colonial history, Cambridge history, what we call Cambridge, because mostly scholars from Cambridge University they participated, they wrote it. So that is why colonial history, the audience was not primarily Indian. Some of you were there in yesterday in Dharamwal. We had a seminar on Dharamwal. There was a person, he was not trained historian, but he did something, seminal, because of which we are doing seminar in our university. There was a person called Dharamwal, Indian person. What he did? After India got independence, post-independence, he went to London. This person goes to London and he starts working on British archive. British archive means whatever letters, whatever reports, whatever data were being sent from India to Britain, colonial masters, the kings and administrators. So they kept it. Still, India also has a national archive. And you will find many secret and also open documents there have been written of huge buildings. Sometimes they reveal certain things, sometimes they do not. So this person Dharamwal I am talking about, he went to British archive and started collecting all the reports which Britishers were sending to London during 18th, 19th century. And that revealed, and then he showed that data. Now data is coming from British source itself. Britishers are sending it. And that presents India's picture in a very different way. It shatters many myths. For example, one example I am giving is that it is believed that in India, the Brahmins are most educated people. From British data, like there is a certain community which is believed to be most educated. According to Dharamwal's record, in Madras Presidency, the data which was limited to that particular region, Madras Presidency includes modern day South India, 4 states, Tamil Nadu. According to that report, it shows that in India you have the Varna system, like Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. The Shudras were the number of Shudras were the maximum. I can show you data today because this is not there. I'll maybe tomorrow's class. And he presented, one of the scholars who was there in our university, he presented that data, and I have also screenshot of that, so I can show you in next class. So what I mean to say that this Cambridge colonial history, they were representing something else. They chose certain narratives which fitted with it. So when they were writing Indian history on the basis of caste, dividing it on the basis of caste, creed, religion, so they did not show this type of facts, which was fact which was there in the data. They try to show that they try to develop a certain narrative. One thing which they did and they succeeded, British people, they succeeded to divide India on the basis of religion, caste, creed. And this colonial narrative is full of that. So they saw that Hindu and Muslim, two major religions of India, they were living very good, they were living in very harmony. Pre-British time period, I'm talking. So they created that division. Second, in which they succeeded, was creating division between Hinduism and Buddhism. Buddhist people, they have lived in coexistence. Philosophically, religion is different. But in British time period, the kind of Buddhist history they created is very, very problematic. So again, and you can't see the picture in ancient India where Buddhism and Hinduism was coexisting very closely. And still, it's not, I'm saying, yesterday when some of you recited the great compassion mantra, like, whenever we do some prayer or program in Nalanda University, so we get these venerables from mostly Vietnam, and they recite a beautiful tune, they recite a mantra. And somebody said when they were reciting, after that, somebody said they are reciting in Vietnamese. Now this is again forgetfulness of us Indian people. They don't know that there is many traditions which are not existing in India, but of Indian origin, they are surviving across different nations. One example, the great compassion mantra. I know. Now, in Vietnam, they have kept it reciting for, you will go to major places, you will find that mantra. Mantra is in Sanskrit, interesting. For mostly Vietnamese people, they don't know the Sanskrit language, so they can't interpret or understand. But still it is recited in Sanskrit. And it has multiple Hindu, so-called Hindu deities. Again, this Hindu, Buddhist, these are problematic terms. But still I am using because we have become habituated. For example, the mantra has invocation of Vaikuntha Vishnu, one of Hindu deity. It has invocation of Narasimha, Hindu deity. The Sanskrit name of mantra itself is Nilkantha Dharani. The mantra is not for Hindu deities, by the way. Mantra is for Avalokiteshvara, Buddhist Bodhisattva, incarnation or a manifestation of Buddha's compassion. But the mantra contains these Hindu references, very clear references of Hindu deities. So when you look from those angles, I think this screenshot, screen saver is created. So this colonial historians, they did not wanted that India to be united in the basis of caste, creed, language. In fact, the present Indian names of state, they have lots of this colonial influence. There was no separate Tamil Nadu, there was no separate, this Maharashtra, and based on the languages, this is a European culture. There you have Germany, French, France, English, England. Followed on that, we also started India. We created Britishers created Bengal in 1906. Bengal division coming on the basis of language. Later on, Telangana, Telugu is recent event. Still, yeah. So, in fact, India was in a way united, holistically united. In a sense, it was not at least divided on the basis of language and display, the way colonial masters presented. So that's one way of writing. This writing of history actually does not show India in a very positive picture. It presents a picture of positive India, past India. Remember, colonial master, they wanted to rule. In order to rule, you have to justify that why I am ruling. You have to justify the people also that why my rule is needed. So they created that once, and they saw that Indians have lots of great monuments, very, very sophisticated literature, Vedas and Puranas and Buddhist sutras. So they tried to show that India had a great past, but present India is very, very bad, in bad shape. Although that was not correct, because Dharampal, the historian which we were discussing yesterday, he presents altogether different picture of India. And unfortunately, it is not still part of Indian's university curriculum. I don't know how many of Indians have heard the name of Dharampal before we organized the university. The conference in the universities. Indian people I am talking about. Because that is not part of Indian mainstream history, which presents India in a positive light. Because India has got independence 75 years back, still colonial hangover, this type of historical hangover is still there. But there were some people, for example, Dharampal, one, or Majumdar, R.C. Majumdar. Some people, a group of historians, they tried to counter this narrative. They tried to argue against this dark picture of India. Bad picture of India. They tried to show the positive side of India. So some of them only showed the positive side of India in the past. Some of them also tried to show positive side of India in the present. So the historians, as a historian, when we read their history, generally we categorize them as nationalists. Because nation, building of nation, importance of nation is prominent in their writing of history. So there is a group of that historian, which we call nationalist. Then around 19th century and early 20th century, there was a big chemical philosopher, Karl Marx, and he influenced almost major part of the world, not just India or Asia, but his thinking. And based on his idea, a style of historical writing got developed. Marx's idea was that everything is governed by capital, by money. Money is the prime thing which governs the society. He wrote a Das Kapital in German. He wrote a book, long volume. And his or Marxist ideology was that everything is governed by money, capital, economy. So that type of narrative, based on this type of narrative, certain historians wrote Indian history. For example, in previous class I discussed that why Buddhism arose. For Buddhism, can somebody tell me what I explained in that? Anybody who studied? I gave an example of Marxist narrative for origin of Buddhism.
The Marxist
idea, like Marxist narrative. Narrative is how Marxist historians present why Buddhism arose in India.
market forces.
Anybody? You remember we discussed origin of iron? Not just to me, it can be entire class. Tell to everybody loudly.
Found out about iron and they started using iron tools, digging and then growing. They started growing vegetables and then the market started happening and then people started thinking more about philosophy and that's how Buddha and Mahavira came about and thought about why they existed and the philosophical questions. So that's
Oh, good, very good. At least she remembers. And she also takes courage to tell to everybody. This is the idea, don't keep your knowledge to yourself, try to share it. I have also not got all this from, just descended upon me. I have read it and I am sharing it as the purpose of our, learning process. So what she said, when I am saying that Marxists, they say that everything is governed by money and economy and the capital is reason behind origin of or development of anything. So when a question is asked why Buddhism in around 5th, 6th century came into existence, so they say that there was iron tool was discovered. Pre 6th century India was Indus Valley is which civilization? Iron civilization? Bronze. Bronze is not a very hard material. So iron is a very hard material compared to bronze. So iron did that the farmers they created many strong sharp tools, agricultural tools. So the agriculture went in a big way. And when agriculture improved, the people had surplus money, extra money. How? Because a surplus food is there. Earlier, when agriculture was not that way developed, what they produce, they consume. Now you have extra food, so you can sell it. When you can sell it, you can earn something extra, right? So you have surplus food, and you have in order to sell, you need market, right? You go to market, whatever market is, where people sell something which they have extra. In house we keep only things which we consume, but in market when you go, you buy something because the people are keeping something surplus. So Marxist historians are saying that the iron tool created extra agriculture, food production, surplus food, which gave development of market, and because of which urban centers were developed. Urban centers. So there are 16 Mahajanapadas in Buddhist texts. Talk about 16 urban centers. Rajgir, this place was one of them. And we have Vaishali, we have Anglo, and we have the name of up there. You are studying Buddhist history, you are supposed to know this. So Marxist historians are saying that now cities is there. People have surplus money. New type of religion is needed. New type because now, the mind, stomach is still full now. So some intellectual, philosophical thought process is needed. Now the human being is not just scared of, say, animals or fire or natural calamities. Civilization is much better. And for that, a new thought process, new type of philosophy is needed. And in that context, urban, so they are saying that because of this surplus food, economic development and urban centers, people needed new type of religion. And that is why Buddhism, Jainism, they are developing in this, places where they are also saying that they are necessarily urban civilized, urban religion. They developed in urban cities. Now, counter to this theory, there was already a Harappa civilization in Indus Valley, which was already urban and without iron. Anyway, so what I just showed this example to show that how history can be written in order to show that money or capital or this is the reason. I'll give another example for just nationalist and Cambrian Marxist both. When India got independence, I gave this example in the previous class. I'm for historical studies, I'm repeating. India got independence 75 years back in 1947. So, nationalist historians, when they are writing history of independence of India, when nationalist historians they are writing, so how they present India. Now the event, remember, the historical event we are discussing is independence of India in 1947. Okay. Now how to write about it, history of this. So there is a group of historians which say that it was a big event of historical importance, so that the region which was colonized for 800 years, first by Islamic invaders, then Mughals got settled, then Britishers came, and India was enslaved for 800 years. Now 1947, 15 of August 1947 is the glorious moment when hundreds of thousands of people they sacrificed their life in order to fight for the country, right? And finally it is getting independence. So it was a big event, glorious event on which Indians, we take pride. Make sense? I'm discussing about Indian, because this culture is, this course is Indian culture, and for Buddhist studies, this is history of Buddhism. So we are discussing in Indian context. So that's one approach. Now let us, if somebody is Marxist or influenced by colonial history, how another person is explaining the same event. Event is 15th August 1947, independence of India. So there is another narrative that will say that okay, that's fine, India is getting independence. That's a fact. But what type of independence it is having? It's not independence. It's just transfer of the power. The power is coming from white people to black people. The Indian penal code almost intact. The kind of administration is intact. How Britishers were ruling, their policing system, their education system, still we are following that. What kind of Indian? It's just transfer of the power. From white people it came to Indian people. And what independence you are talking about? On 14th of August 1947, India got divided. Pakistan, Bangladesh, which was East Pakistan then. Already India lost Myanmar in 1936. What sort of independence? Thousands of innocent people died. This is the fact. Everybody knows. Thousands of innocent people are there dying because of this partition. And not only that, India became more corrupt after independence. Administration was much better. Everybody accepts that during at least British time period. What sort of independence? The poet writes, "ये दाग दाग उजाला ये सब गरीब से हमें इंतजार था जिसका ये शहर गुजरे." This is not that dawn, that morning which we waited for, 100 years. It has many blemishes. ये दाग दाग उजाला. Although there is light, but there is lots of darkness. He's writing this on the eve of independence. So the same event, one historian, a group of historians, they showed it as glorious and another historians are showing it as a very doomed or some sort of. And both are, if you look their narrative, the way they are trying to argue, they both are opposite. One is glorious moment, and another saying it's not glorious moment. And which one is correct? Second one. So you have preference for a certain narrative. Which one is correct? You don't know. Certain people will have a preference. Historian, human being, we all have our preferences, we have all our biases. So both are correct in a way. Why both are correct? They are choosing certain, cherry picking certain facts, and they are sidelining the other facts. While the second Marxist narrative is sidelining the glorious contribution or the freedom fighters' contribution in a way. While this nationalist historians are sidelining another side of Indian history, which is again fact, but again cherry picked fact, a certain narrative. This is how we get eluded in history. History is not objective in itself. History is always subjective. And your serious once a student told me, historical studies student, when I take such classes, so a student told me, sir, students are saying Dr. Pransu hates history. No, that's not the idea. I'm just trying to show that history is subjective. It's not, I'm trying to show that history is nonsense, which this slide shows.
But in 19 thinking for us that all the narratives are equally important because you was going to work on each of the perspective and then we learn.
No, so I won't give you, don't expect a very direct answer from me. But any, I tell my students to ask a question, don't expect direct answer, and I will leave you more confused than, before.
No, that's not true.
So I have my preference, but I am not supposed to impose my preferences on. So I give you, that's my approach. You have the freedom, you can choose whatever. All are in a way correct, but they are partially correct. If you remember Jaina philosophy, I have taught them, so they are partially correct. There is elephant, big elephant, somebody has caught its trunk. So they are saying elephant is, and these 5 people are blind people. 5 blind people. This is a simile example. 5 blind people are trying to identify an elephant in a room. So somebody gets its leg. He defines elephant is like a pillar. Somebody caught its trunk. He defines elephant is like a pipe. Somebody gets its tail. He tells elephant is like a broom. Somebody touches his stomach and says elephant is like a wall. Now these five blind people, they are trying to see, identify what is the elephant. Similarly, history is something which we cannot see directly. We are blind about it. It's something dark, past. And they are like blind people, they are picking certain things and trying to identify, oh, this is how history works. It's all selective. That is what Jain philosophy calls it, like anekantvad. I asked a question here. Sit down, yeah, you ask.
What are the differences between Marxists and nationalist history?
So, on a very broad sense, as I said, nationalist history, they try to present only a positive side of it. Marxist history, it's not bothered about positive or negative. While colonial is bothered about that, but Marxist history is not about positive. Their worldview or their narrative is that whatever good or bad things happen, it's because of economy, capital. This is in a very gross sense I'm saying. But yeah, on this level, they try to show that, for example, Buddhism. Why Buddhism arose? Not because there was a great philosopher. There was an economic surplus, so people did it. Another type of religion. Why Buddha left his home? Marxist said he did not leave by seeing dead man and old man, and they say that there was a fight between two countries. Buddha did not participate in, so he was forced to leave his country, and that is why he got interested in. Now they are not bothered about Buddhism. They are cherry picking certain facts in order to show that okay, look, everybody is for money and power. So nobody leaves, including Buddha does not leave money and power. He was forced to exile. I'll tell you this story later on, which I have got to Buddhist studies. And they cherry pick certain facts, and based on those sources, they try to interpret their own ideology. They are not bothered about what, and it's not possible also. As I said, they are blind people. At least what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to show that okay, people have identified elephant as a pipe. People have identified elephant as a pillar. With this, I'm also blind. What happened? I don't know. What happened in 1947? Even what is happening right now, not possible to know on the international level. There are many secrets which are kept and which are not revealed into the talk. So here there is an article. What is history? History is a fiction. We invent to persuade ourselves that events are knowable and that life has order and direction. Don't take this definition, sister. This is a joke. Don't take it. Otherwise, you'll tell this is what Dr. Plasma defines it. And you will end up thinking that he is mocking it. No, that's not. But this is just a joke. Take it as a, lighter level. So it's a fiction which we try to persuade ourselves that things are knowable. So historiography, let us now, okay, before we enter, let us also discuss what is Indian. This is the Western. All these models, by the way, all these models, including Cambridge as well as Masters, they all are in the paradigm of Western pedagogy, Western education. They are not Indian models. How now, of course, they all are adopted in India. But how Indians, ancient Indian I am talking about, before this colonial influences, how Indians thought about history. So in India, they call history as a itihasa. Iti. Iti means thus. Has means habit. So it generally means it thus happened. Itihas. Now, apparently, it looks like in popular Hindi, they translate history as itihas. Anybody who have studied also in Hindi medium or familiar with this term itihas, Indian people, raise your hand. They're familiar with this term itihas. So you know history in your school books, history means itihas. But in a deeper sense, itihas is not. Indian people wrote itihas. They did not write history. They were not bothered about what happened 100 or 1000 years back, what happened to a king. Or there was a war between say a demon Ravana and the Lord Ram, or there was a war between Pandavas and Kauravas. They were not bothered about that. They are writing in India only two type of history people know: Ramayana and Mahabharata. You go to any place, you see some ruins, you will find this is a Ramayana. Local people will tell you this is a Ramayana time period or this is a Mahabharata time period. There are many Buddhist monuments across this region. People connect with the Ramayana and Mahabharata. Local people. They know only two history. Local people I am talking about. Now, what is this itihasa in Indian sense? So, if you have to define itihasa, there is a definition which is also given by Indian chronological. His name is Kaldahana. Have you heard this name? This book, famous book? Rastharani. So Rastharani was a book written around 11th, 12th century by Kashmir. There is a region in northern India called Kashmir, where he write the history of kings of Kashmir. And this is how he defines itihas in his book. He says there is a verse in Sanskrit: "Dharma artha kam moksham upadesh samanvitam kathayuktam puravrittam itihas tak." Itihas tak itihas the chakshasu mahe mate. What is my mata? What is my opinion of Indian itihas? He is saying that itihas literally means it this happened. He says itihas should contain four things, four limbs of Purushartha. Four limbs of Purushartha. Uska student are aware of what are the Purushartha? What are Purushartha? So four Purushartha in India, in order to have achieved your human pursuits, there are four things which you need to inculcate in your life. In general, I am not talking about monks, nuns. A general householder's life, you are supposed to have achieved four things in your life. So one is material pursuits, like money, material pursuits, then sensual pleasure, calm, and then dharma, righteousness, and moksha is the freedom from cycle of birth and death. So these four things you need to have in order to have a holistic life, complete life. This was the Indian idea of human pursuits, that you should have artha, and you should righteousness, and also it's not about leaving everything, all the pleasures and things which make you happy. That is also needed. That is called karma. And then moksha, liberation from the life. So Kadhaman is saying, whatever upadesh, I call itihas, if there is a katha yukta, historical accounts that are framed in shape of history, stories are not history, they are framed in some is historical accounts, not the tape recorded version, not the actual version. Indian people, they were not interested to tell what exactly happened, when this exactly happened. Because it was not idea to glorify some, past king. They created certain models, what we call archetypes, like Buddha, like Rama, like Krishna. And they are portraying that, look, these are the models for you. And related to that, they created, based on some historical facts, they are creating certain archetypes, certain models, certain ideas, which when you read it, you get inspired and it helps you. So Indian Itihas is not about the kings. Indian Itihas is about you, about us. How we can get inspired. We can, if you read Ramayana and Mahabharata, the Indian, these types of, you feel like, look, these, even king also suffered a lot. Not just king, he was the incarnation of God. He also suffered a lot. And he could not, so you feel that, okay, I'm an ordinary person, you feel relief when you read the story. And we all have, life is full of suffering, Buddha's first control. So we all suffer from many things. So this type of itihas, they say it does happen. It does happen. So they are trying to tell you something which did not exactly happen, but something based on which they are writing, which will help you, which will help the contemporary people. So there is a thing called, myth, mythology. That's a Western idea. And there is a history. So mythology, you have Greek mythology, you have Roman, many mythology. They don't have direct historical, and then you have a history. These are two extremes. Mythology is totally fictitious, fiction. History is, at least it tries to tell you exactly what happened. Itihas is something mixture of this. It has overlap. Indian context of Itihas. The way Indian people wrote it, they wrote it not for the kings, they wrote it for the people. But using those grand narratives, what we call grand, something big. Like they are not talking about, ordinary, they are talking about Rama and Krishna. Okay. We'll have a small break. Before that, let me tell you this. In the West, there's a Latin term called Historia de Senseca. How history means which makes sense to you. If those who are aware of Mahabharata story, how many of you are aware? Okay. Oh. Good number. Anyway, those who are not aware, don't bother. There is a story of, so there is a very most voluminous book India has ever written or world has ever written is Mahabharata. It has 1 lakh slokas. So this, not just but one book is this big. We need to have a rack of books. It's one text called Mahabharata. We have in library. We got it last year. It has 18 volumes. So you need to have there are 100,000 slokas. So it is this big. One book. This big. It's called Mahabharata. Ramayana also is almost 32,000 verses. But Mahabharata is maximally. Just one book is this thing. Now this thick book, and if you want to make sense of this book, according to Western mode of history, the entire history or the story of this voluminous work will reduce in 4 lines. There were 2 brothers, 2 cousins, they fought with each other, one won, another lost. And Mahabharata ends. Those who know story of Mahabharata, that's the crux of the story, right? Then what these people are writing for, this political book? Are you aware? So she says Mahabharata is conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. That is just a small portion of Mahabharata, which is called Bhagavad Gita, which is part of a Parva, where it is just a small portion of it. And mostly Indian people get to know about Krishna. They connect Krishna with Mahabharata. If you read that thick Mahabharata, even if you remove Krishna in the entire history, entire story of Mahabharata, story won't change. Krishna is very, now don't get offended, those who are Hindu, don't get offended. This is a fact. Krishna in the entire text of Mahabharata is a very minor figure. And his story is not part of main Mahabharata. There is an appendix to Mahabharata which is called Harivamsha Purana. Generally, it is not part of the main story. An ancient version of Mahabharata, ancient manuscripts of Mahabharata, for example, there was a manuscript found in Central Asia, has no Krishna in it. So don't get offended, no problem. I'll tell you why people did that. They were not trying to tell you, as I said, if you try, the problem with us, we get offended or we feel, because our history, our itihasa, Indian itihas does not make sense to us. We are modeled in that type of history, or modeled, our thought process are modeled in history, written by British people. India did not have a closed canon, closed book, because they were not writing for kings. They were not writing for what happened to Jesus Christ exactly. So they modified it, they improved. For example, this mobile phone, when I was in MA, Android version 2 I was using. Now this is Android 14 or 13 whatever. Every year it gets upgraded. This upgradation is good thing or bad thing? Mostly it's good. It's good. Technology has improved. People have improved. Similarly, what 1,000 years back happened, or the methods of 2,000 years ago, is not very helpful for writing. So Mahabharata, ancient version was called Jaya. Then it became Bharata. Then it became Mahabharata. It is getting expanded. Original version has just 2,000 shlokas. Now it is 50 times enlarged. People were adding to it. So what we call open canon. Canon means, for example, in Bible, you can't add a page. In Quran, if you change or modify a sentence, problem. Your life will be in threat. Here people are expanding it. Buddhism, there are multiple books, multiple versions of the books. The tradition which is popular in, say, Sri Lanka or Myanmar, follow different canon from what is followed in, say, Vietnam. There is a Theravada canon, there is a Mahayana Sutra. They don't agree with each other, and no problem in that. Because the people of, say, Myanmar are different from people of, say, Tibet. Tibet is located at a 13,000 feet high. So they adopted based, intention was not to impose the religion or not to impose the ideology. Intention was to support, help the people in a righteous way. So text got modified. No problem, don't see it as a problem. Historians, they tell that this is interpolation. This idea comes because of Western mode of history. In India, we had open canon. People, you mentioned about Bhagavad Gita. Anybody, we know first line of Bhagavad Gita. Anyway, I'll tell you. Dharma Kshetre, Guru Kshetre, Samveta, Yujum Sabha. This is the first one. Kashmir versions of Bhagavad Gita, Dharma Kshetre, Guru Kshetre, Sarva Kshetra Samagame. Different. Which is correct? Both are correct. For Kashmiri version, that's okay. No problem. This diversity, diversified culture, diverse is the strength of India. Here actually, historical studies are teaching Indian culture, that's the strength. Multiple narratives, they are welcome. and that presents the holistic overall composite picture of India. Okay, let us have a balance. We'll continue.